This is what you need to know now. President Trump offers a new explanation for striking Iran, denying Israel forced his hand. It comes as the war escalates overseas, with the U.S. shutting more embassies across the region and urging Americans to get out.
So we truly are living in a nightmare here.
An American living under bombardment in Beirut describes the nightmare of daily strikes and sleepless nights. A major sell-off on Wall Street, investors reacting to growing fears the conflict could widen while gas prices spike in just one day. Plus, a small plane makes a dramatic emergency landing in the Hudson River, and the 2 people on board survive. And a teen driver trapped in a river after a crash, rescued just in time, thanks to her Apple Watch and quick-acting deputies. We have much more what you need to know now. I'm Rachel Scott from ABC News. It is Tuesday, March 3rd. This is what you need to know. Let's get right to the big story. The war between Iran.
Day 4. 11 countries now involved in this war. 6 Americans dead. Nearly 2,000 strikes carried out across at least 50 locations in Iran. The Dow plunging 1,200 points. Gas prices up 13 cents in a single day. 3 American embassies closed. The State Department telling every American in the Middle East to get out now. And the President of the United States has given 4 different explanations for why this war started. 4 in 4 days. 1 explanation per day of the war. And not variations on a theme. Not different emphases of the same underlying rationale. 4 genuinely different, mutually contradictory accounts of why American soldiers are dying and why the global economy is already absorbing the shock. Trump said it was Iran's long-range missiles that could threaten Europe and eventually reach the American homeland. Pete Hegseth said it was to stop Iran from advancing its nuclear weapons program. 4 explanations. 4 days. From the 3 most senior officials responsible for American foreign policy and national security. All different. All contradicting each other. All offered publicly on camera as the official justification for a war that has already killed 6 Americans, destabilized an entire region, sent the stock market into freefall, and cost a number that is climbing by the hour. An American citizen living in Beirut described what day 4 of this war feels like from inside it. Low-flying drones throughout the day and periodic strikes. I haven't been able to sleep very well within the last 3 days. Only a few hours per night just because we're being awakened in the middle of the night sometimes by loud explosions. We truly are living in a nightmare here. Marco Rubio said it was to preemptively protect American forces from expected Iranian retaliation after an anticipated Israeli strike. And then Trump, asked directly whether Israel forced his hand, said no. He said he might have forced Israel's hand, that it was his opinion Iran was going to attack first, that he felt strongly about it, that American is one of thousands of U.S. citizens currently trapped in a war zone that their own government created without warning them, without evacuating them first, and without being able to explain consistently why it was necessary. That is the story. 4 explanations. 1 nightmare. No consistent answer to the most basic question a government owes its people before sending anyone to die. Why? But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right? Let's get back to the video. Let's go through each explanation precisely, because the contradictions are not subtle, and they are not a matter of interpretation. They are documented on camera in the officials' own words over 4 consecutive days. Explanation 1. Trump, in his initial statement announcing the operation, pointed to Iran's long-range missiles. His exact framing was that those missiles could threaten American allies in Europe, American troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. That is a specific and testable claim. It is also a claim that Senator Chris Van Hollen, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee with access to classified intelligence briefings, directly contradicted on CNN. Van Hollen said Iran's ballistic missiles are nowhere near capable of hitting the United States. Anyone who says they had that capacity is lying. Those are his words. A senator with classified access calling the president's stated justification for the war a lie, on camera. That did not dominate the coverage the way it should have. Explanation 2. Pete Hegseth said the strikes were to prevent Iran from advancing its nuclear weapons program. Iran had a conventional gun to our head as they tried to lie their way to a nuclear bomb. That is a different justification entirely. Not missiles threatening Europe. Nuclear weapons development. Two different threats. Two different legal and strategic rationales. One war. Explanation 3. Marco Rubio said the United States struck first to prevent expected Iranian retaliation after an anticipated Israeli attack. We knew there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that would precipitate an attack against American forces. We knew if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties. That is yet another justification. Not missiles. Not nuclear weapons. Preemptive self-defense against anticipated retaliation for an Israeli action. And crucially, that explanation contains an admission. We knew there was going to be an Israeli action. Rubio is saying the United States had advanced knowledge of an Israeli strike plan and coordinated with it. That Israel's planned action was the triggering event that drove the American decision. That is regime change driven by Israeli strategic objectives with American military power as the instrument. Explanation 4. Trump in the Oval Office, asked directly whether Israel forced his hand, said no. He said he might have forced Israel's hand, that it was his opinion Iran was going to attack first, regardless of Israel. That the decision was his, and was based on his assessment of Iranian intentions. That directly contradicts Rubio's explanation. Rubio said the Israeli action was the known trigger. Trump said it had nothing to do with Israel. The Secretary of State and the President gave opposite accounts of the same decision in the same news cycle. That is not a communications failure. That is evidence that the decision was made without the kind of deliberate strategic process that produces a coherent rationale. It was made and then explained after the fact by different people who had not coordinated their explanations because there was no agreed explanation to coordinate. Nearly 2,000 strikes, at least 50 locations, 6 Americans dead, 11 countries involved, and the people who made this decision cannot agree on why they made it. Let's talk about what this war is doing to the American economy right now. Because while the White House talks about obliteration and total victory, the numbers hitting ordinary Americans are already moving in the wrong direction, and they are going to get significantly worse. The Dow plunged approximately 1,200 points on Tuesday morning alone. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ were both down more than 2%. Those are not abstract financial metrics. Those are retirement accounts. Those are 401k balances. Those are the investments that middle-class Americans were told would be the foundation of their financial security, down more than 2% in a single morning because investors looked at 11 countries involved in a war with no clear objective and decided to price in the risk of it getting worse. Gas prices. According to GasBuddy, the national average crossed above $3 per gallon and rose more than 13 cents in a single day. One day, 13 cents. That is the fastest single-day increase in gas prices that most Americans have seen outside of a major supply disruption. And this is day 4. Analysts are already warning that if oil prices remain elevated, broader inflation follows. Companies pass higher fuel costs to consumers. Every product that moves by truck gets more expensive. Every trip to work costs more. Every grocery run costs more. The mortgage market. Trump had been pointing to declining mortgage rates as evidence that his economic stewardship was working. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is now back above 6%. Market turmoil from the war is driving up borrowing costs. The people who were finally starting to see a path to home ownership are watching that path get more expensive in real time because of a war that the president's own officials cannot explain consistently. The economic analysis from ABC News was precise and direct. The conflict overseas directly puts at risk some bright spots in the affordability crisis here at home. That is not partisan commentary. That is a factual assessment of what happens to an economy when a major military conflict disrupts the oil markets that underpin global supply chains, and Trump told reporters that U.S. munition stockpiles have never been higher, that supplies are virtually unlimited, that conflicts can be fought forever using current inventories, and then in the same press conference acknowledged that some of the highest-grade munitions are not where we want them to be, blaming the previous administration's support for Ukraine. Virtually unlimited, and not where we want them to be in the same answer, about the same stockpile, in the same press conference. That is the pattern. A claim of total strength followed immediately by an admission that contradicts it, attributed to someone else. Let's talk about the Americans trapped in this war zone, because this is the part of the story that gets buried under the geopolitical analysis and the stock market coverage and deserves to be told plainly. The State Department has now closed or reduced operations at embassies in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Beirut, and is evacuating personnel from the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, and Iraq simultaneously. The State Department is preparing military and charter flights for Americans who want to leave. That preparation is happening now, on day 4, after the war started. There was no pre-war evacuation. There was no warning to American citizens living and working across the region that their government was about to launch a military operation that would make their locations active war zones. People woke up to explosions, to drone alerts, to the news that the country they were living in was now part of an expanding conflict involving at least 11 nations. The American in Beirut described it precisely: low-flying drones throughout the day, periodic strikes with no predictable timing, unable to sleep because of explosions in the night, caught off guard, a nightmare. That American is not a soldier, not a government employee with security protocols and evacuation plans, a civilian, living his life, who found himself inside a war his own government started without warning him and without evacuating him first. The State Department is now warning of serious safety risks as options to depart become limited. Due to flight cancellations and airport closures, options are becoming limited because airports are closing, because airlines are canceling flights, because the window for safe departure is narrowing by the hour as the conflict expands. This is what it looks like when a government starts a war without an evacuation plan for its own citizens. Senator Van Hollen made this point directly. The administration that didn't have time to put in an evacuation plan for U.S. citizens is now planning a CIA covert operation to trigger regime change in Iran. The same people who left their own citizens to wake up to drone strikes without warning are the people running this war. That is not a small operational failure. That is a fundamental betrayal of the basic obligation any government has to the people it represents when it makes decisions that put those people in danger. Let's be precise about what day 4 of this war actually tells us, because the pattern that is emerging in these 4 days is going to define everything that comes next. Point number 1, 4 different explanations for the same war in 4 days is not a messaging problem. It is evidence that the decision was made impulsively without a coherent strategic rationale. Missile threats to Europe, nuclear weapons development, preemptive self-defense against Israeli-triggered Iranian retaliation, personal assessment that Iran was going to attack first regardless of Israel. These are not variations on a theme. They are different threats, different legal frameworks, different strategic contexts, and different implications for what success looks like and how long the operation needs to continue. A government that has thought through its decision carefully comes out with a consistent explanation because the explanation reflects the actual reasoning. A government that made a decision first and is constructing the justification afterward produces 4 different explanations because different people are constructing different justifications independently with no agreed underlying rationale to anchor them. The American people deserve to know which explanation, if any, represents the actual basis for the decision, because the answer determines what this war is for, what it will take to end it, and whether any of the objectives being described are actually achievable. Point number 2. The economic impact is immediate, measurable, and directly contradicts Trump's core domestic political promise. 13 cents on gas prices in 1 day. The Dow down 200 points. The S&P and NASDAQ both down more than 2%. Mortgage rates back above 6%. Inflation risk rising as fuel costs move through supply chains. Trump's central domestic political argument has been that his economic management was delivering lower costs for ordinary Americans. That promise is now in direct conflict with the economic consequences of his foreign policy decision. The same president who claimed credit for declining gas prices is now presiding over a 13-cent single-day spike. The same president who pointed to declining mortgage rates now has rates moving back up because of market uncertainty he created. The people who voted for Trump because of economic concerns are the people who fill up their gas tanks every week. They are going to feel this war in dollars and cents before they feel it in any other way. And the administration has no coherent answer for why those economic costs are worth paying, because it has no coherent answer for what those costs are buying. Point number 3. Americans are trapped in a war zone their own government created without warning them or evacuating them first. Civilians waking up to explosions, unable to sleep because of drone strikes. Watching the window for safe departure narrow as airports close and flights are canceled. This is not an abstract consequence of geopolitical miscalculation. These are real people in real danger because their government made a decision that put them in a war zone without warning them it was coming. The evacuation infrastructure is being built now, after the war started. Military and charter flights are being arranged now, 4 days in, while Americans are already living under bombardment. The State Department is warning that options to depart are becoming limited. That warning means that some Americans who want to leave may not be able to leave, because the window that should have been opened before the first bomb dropped is now closing while they are still inside it. Point number 4. 11 countries involved on day 4 means this is already a regional war, and the administration's claim that it can be contained and concluded on a defined timeline is not supported by the trajectory. 11 countries. Day 4. The conflict has expanded faster than any of the optimistic administration projections suggested it would. Hezbollah launching rockets into Israel from Lebanon. Israel conducting strikes and not ruling out ground operations in Lebanon. Iranian drone strikes on embassies in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. The UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, and Iraq all facing enough threat that diplomatic missions are being evacuated or reduced. Nearly 2,000 American strikes across 50 locations in Iran in 4 days. That is an extraordinary operational tempo. Sustaining that tempo for the 4 to 6 weeks that military analysts say the operation requires will consume munitions at a rate that Trump simultaneously described as virtually unlimited and acknowledged we're not where we want them to be for the highest grade weapons. 11 countries on day 4. The trajectory is expansion, not resolution. And the administration that cannot agree on why the war started is the same administration that is going to have to navigate whatever this becomes on day 40. So here is the bottom line. Day 4 of the Iran war, 11 countries now involved, 6 Americans dead, nearly 2,000 strikes across at least 50 locations, the Dow down 1,200 points, gas prices up 13 cents in a single day, mortgage rates rising, 3 American embassies closed, Americans trapped in Beirut sleeping through explosions they did not see coming because no one warned them. 4 explanations for why this war started: Iran's missiles, Iran's nuclear program, preemptive defense against Israeli-triggered retaliation, Trump's personal assessment that Iran was going to attack first, all offered by the 3 most senior officials in American foreign policy within 4 days of each other, all contradicting each other, none of them the definitive answer to the question every military family in America deserves to have answered before their loved one goes into a war zone. Why? Trump told reporters the stockpiles are virtually unlimited. He also acknowledged the highest-grade munitions are not where we want them to be. He said the U.S. is prepared for the war to continue whatever it takes. He also said conflicts can be fought forever using current inventories. These are not consistent statements. They are the same pattern of claiming total strength while acknowledging specific weakness that has defined this administration's communication about this war from day 1. An American in Beirut woke up to drones and explosions and sleepless nights and said simply, what most people caught in a war zone they did not choose. Eventually say, we truly are living in a nightmare here. His government started that nightmare. His government cannot agree on why. His government did not warn him it was coming or evacuate him before it arrived. And his government is now telling him that options to depart are becoming limited as the airports close around him. That is the story of day 4. Not the strike numbers, not the stock market points, not the geopolitical chess moves being discussed in secure conference rooms by people who are not waking up to explosions in the night. An American in Beirut. A nightmare he did not choose. A government that cannot explain why. Stay with it. Because day 5 is already here, and the trajectory of this war is expansion, not resolution, and the full accounting of what 4 different explanations and 11 countries on day 4 means for the weeks ahead is still coming into focus.